Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from AlexMercedCoder.dev. And in this video, what I want to do is talk more about files. In the previous video, we talked about basically how to work with files from the front end. In this video, what I want to do is talk more about files from the back end. So particularly with Express, but generally the principles of this video can be applied to whatever backend framework you would like to use. So what we're going to do is we're going to create an Express app. So I'm going to create a folder. We'll just call this like Express files. Okay. And I'm going to open this up in terminal. And first we'll just start off by creating an Express app. Okay, so Express files, so we're going to do an npm init-y. Then we're going to do an npm install of Express and Multer. Multer is going to be the tool is the middleware tool to read multi-part form. Okay, because again, when you submit data, whether you're making like a fetch request or a form submission, that data gets submitted and generally has different types of content types. It could be more basically, usually you work with like application/JSON. That's if it's like a JSON body. Sometimes you work with URL encoded, where the data is encoded in the URL from a form submission. But then there's multi-part form data, which is generally how you would send files over. Okay, if you want to send files to a server. Express doesn't have built-in support for multi-part form data. Multer is the library you would use for that, so that's why I'm installing that. Now, as far as support for multi-part form data in other frameworks and languages, you would just search. You read the doc, say, okay, how would I handle multi-part form data, and go from there. Okay, so we're going to install that. Okay, I'm going to just quick click. Let's do this. New. I'm going to create a server.js. And I'm going to create a public folder. New folder, public, because we're going to serve as static files. Okay, so let's set up a quick Express server. So const express equals require express to bring in the library. Const multer equals require multer. We'll come back to that. Const app equals express. There's our application object. Okay, one thing that I do want is, okay, what I want is a static folder, because that's how I'm going to deliver the website. So we're going to create app.use express.static, and we're going to say that public folder is our static folder. That's how we're going to essentially serve our pages for now. Okay, app.use, and we are actually that's really all we need now is an app.listen. App.listen, and we'll put that on port 4444. Listening on port 444444. Cool. Okay, so there's our app. And I'm just going to put a little script, some scripts in here. The usual. Start, which is just going to be node server.js. And dev, since I'm using a newer version of Node, again, anything 18 plus, you can do this. You can do node -- watch server.js, which is like the equivalent of doing like nodemon, except now you don't have to install nodemon. Okay, so cool. So first, let's just actually create an index page. So let me go in the public folder and create an index.html. Okay, and let's do, and then just kind of, and then just put an h1 in here. The main page. Let's try this out. npm run dev. We run that dev script. Okay, everything looks like it's working, so I should see this page on localhost 4444. The main page, perfect. Okay, cool. So we have our page. So first, let's actually just like work on like receiving the data from our form. Okay, there's a couple different ways we can do this. Okay, so I'm gonna make a route to handle that form submission. So we're gonna do an app.post. This will just be called slash, submit form 1. Call it submit form 1. And rec res. Okay. And we are going to console.log rec.body. Okay. And then say res.json rec.body. Okay. Or we'll actually just redirect them back to the main page. There's that redirect back to the main page. Okay, cool. So that's that. So now let's go back to this index.html, and we want to create a form. And that basically when you submit this form, it's going to submit to the action, which is going to be slash submit form 1. And the method is going to be post. Okay, so there's our form, and there's going to be one input in here of type equals file. Okay, and actually there's one more property with that here, and encoding type, and we want this one, multi-part form data. So you see there's different encoding. So in case URL encoded is the default, that's typically what a form does. But sometimes you're going to include files, and that's where you want the multi-part form data. That's whenever you include like a file input. Okay. Cool. So there's that. Type file, we have to give it a name, but you can call it file. Sometimes usually a lot of times people call it files. Okay, and then you can choose, you could do multiple if you want them to be able to upload multiple files. Okay, I covered that in the previous video. If you want to watch my video on files in front-end JavaScript, do that. And then we'll have a little button for submitting the form. So upload. Okay. So we should see that now here. If I refresh the page, there it is. Okay, cool. So again, when I submit this form, that should submit to this route. Should make a post request to this form, and we'll console log the rec.body so we can see that something's wrong. Okay, so I'm going to say here, result.text, upload. Now let's take a look at what we see here. Undefined. Okay, bottom line is this. Again, a request body needs to be parsed. Express doesn't automatically parse the express body. So usually we would turn on middleware to parse the body. So for example, if it was like, app.use express.url encoded, we would do this. What's the property we usually put in here? Extended equals true. We would do that if we were just doing a normal form submission. We would do app.use, and then we would do express.json if we're expressing JSON bodies. Okay, but basically, when you submit a multi-part form body, it doesn't fall into either of these categories. Okay, so this is what you would use for like, what is it, like XXX? Let me just look that up again. Be enc type. So yeah, application xww URL form encoded. That would be, so let me just copy that for a second. That's what this middleware is for. So when it's that type, okay, but that's not what we're going to be doing here. So let me go change that again. Multi-part form data. Okay. And then this JSON is for when the content type is application JSON. Okay, but the content type for our form is neither of these. So right now that body isn't being parsed. So even if I upload it now, after adding those body parsers, okay, see, I just get this empty object because it doesn't know how to parse it. So now it's not undefined. It is attempting to parse the body, but it's doing it incorrectly. Okay, so how do I handle this then? Okay, this is where Multer comes into play. Okay, so what you would do is, but the thing is that Multer works in a couple different ways. So in that case, that's why you're not going to put it as a global middleware like we do here. What you're going to do is you're going to say like const, and you have a variable. I'm just going to call it multi-part equals Multer. Okay. And then that's going to give us our thing. Okay. And again, you can actually put middleware on the individual routes. So what I'll do is I'll put an extra comment here and I can put my middleware in here. Okay. So we'll use our multi-part variable that we just declared. And this is going to have many different methods. Okay. Right now, I'm only expecting there to be one form field that it contains a file. So I'm going to use single because it's saying, hey, get me this one field on that form of this name has the file. Okay, so if I click here, and then again, that field we called it, what did we call it? We gave it a name of files. Okay, we called it files in the name property. So I'm going to say files. Okay. So now, what's going to happen is that Multer, and again, I'm going to just change these a little bit. Okay, this is the body. And then this is going to be files. And actually stores it in a rec.file property. Okay, representing the uploaded file. Okay, cool. So now let's see what happens when I submit the form now. So I'm going to upload the file, result.txt, upload. Okay, it's been uploaded. And see now, the body now is just an object. It's still an empty object because it takes the file out. Okay, and when I console log rec.file, now the file is there. Okay, cool. Okay, it's still a blob type. Okay, nice. Okay, so there's the object. Wonderful. Okay, that's all fine and good. Now, what happened if I had other things in this form? Okay, so let's say if I had another input called type equals text, and the name is cheese. Okay. So now let's go back and refresh this. So I'm going to say Gouda, and then I upload the file. Okay, and then when I upload, okay, now when I do that, let's take a look at what I see. Okay, so you see now our body object has cheese. Okay, has cheese in it. So that part, so the text gets parsed separately, and this becomes part of the body, and then again the file that was uploaded becomes part of files. Okay. Now what if we change that form? Okay, and let's go back to the next HTML, and we make that where you can upload multiple files. So multiple. Let's see what we get instead. Okay, so again, we'll just put I'll misspell Munster. We'll upload a few files here. Oh, actually, I didn't refresh the page. Let me refresh. Munster. Let's upload multiple files. Okay, and then when I click upload, unexpected field, Multer error. Oh, okay, that happened over here. Okay. Now what happened here is that now, see, it was expecting one file. Now it's no longer expecting one file. I'm uploading many files, so I got to change this to, I think it was a dot array. So I think that means for multiple files. Okay, and then you're going to say files. Okay, and let's try that again. Okay, so again, multiple files. I hit upload. Let's take a look at what we got. Okay, but see, this time files is undefined. Why? Because it doesn't put it in rec.file anymore. Now that there's more than one file, it's actually going to put it in rec.files. Okay, so now let's try that again. So then again, make this, well, whatever. Boop, boop, boop. I open it, I upload. Now let's take a look. And see, we see the array of files in rec.files. Okay, so just so you can see like the pattern of how this middleware works. Okay, awesome. And this is totally fine, and this is all fun and good. But what if you don't want to do this? What if you don't want to use the action property on a form? What if you wanted to do something like use a fetch request? Well, let's make another form. Okay, we'll call this one submit form. We'll submit to the same thing, except we're not gonna do an action. So technically, none of this really matters. So all this can be removed. We're just gonna give this an ID of form2. Okay, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna write some JavaScript. So just create a script tag so we can write some JavaScript. Okay, and we're gonna say that const form equals document dot query selector an ID of form2. Okay, so form2. Awesome. Now what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, whenever you click on that form, add event listener. Okay, submit. And then what you're going to do is event. Okay, and then we're going to need the form data. So const form data equals a new form data object. And we're going to pass like the event dot target, because technically the form is the event target. And you pass the form to a form data object to create a form data object. Okay, and then we can do a fetch. Okay, and we'll just say make this async. Okay, so then we'll do an await fetch. And again, we're fetching to submit form 1. And basically what we are submitting is via a method of post, and we're submitting a body that is just basically the form data. Okay, and let's just see what happens if we just do that. Okay, so let's go back over here. I'm going to refresh the page, and now we have two forms. Gouda, then we're going to submit multiple forms again, or multiple files. Okay, and then we're going to click upload. Okay, now let's see what got logged here at the end. And see, it works pretty much the same. Okay, so again, that's how it would look like. And notice I didn't put the content type. Okay, the browser will know that when you submit a form data object as the body, to pass the content type as multi-part form data. So for example, just to kind of show that in at work, let's go to server package.json server.js, what I'm looking for. Okay, let's console log rec.headers. Okay, content type. Okay, so you can see, so we can see the header. Okay, so I'm gonna refresh this to Gouda, do this, and then hit upload, and let's see what we get to console logged. And see, notice what you get. Notice that it doesn't just get multi-part form body, but it also adds this boundary thing. And that's going to be different depending on which browser you're using, which is why it's important not necessarily to spell out multi-part form boundary when you're submitting, when you're writing your JavaScript. To just let the browser handle that, because again, this will be different depending on which browser you're using. Okay, and that's going to allow something like Multer to better parse that multi-part form body. Okay, so unlike like JSON, where I would add the content type header manually, in this case, the content type header will be added automatically for us by the browsers. We can see here because we logged it from the server, and we can see that this was the header that came in for content type. Okay, so without this extra bit, it won't be able to parse it right. So watch what happens if I try to. I mean, let's try it out. Okay, it might work. We'll see. Okay, but let's see what happens if I do this. So if I were to manually define my headers and say, okay, content type multi, let me just copy it from this over here, multi-part form data. Okay, so let's see if that still works. Okay, so again, I will choose a couple files. I will put in some text here, and I will upload. Okay, and let's see what happens. Well, in this case, it looks like it still just overrode it. Multi-part form data boundary. Okay. Yeah, so in that case, it's just still pretty much replaced it. I know sometimes that doesn't do that, so keep in mind. But I don't have to. So I could specify the headers, but notice it just ignored it and then put what it was going to put. Okay, so it wasn't necessary. Cool. So yeah, that's basically how you would work with the form. So now again here in the server.js, I have the form. I have the rec.files has all the files, and then I can do what I want to do with them. So if I wanted to read them, okay, what I can do is we can make this async for a second, because again, each of these are blobs. Okay, so let's console, let's console.log, and we're going to await, okay, rec.files 0. Okay, and each of those are blobs, and blobs have a method called text. So if you might have remembered in the previous video, okay, that I used a file reader. Okay, and a file reader has an event-based API. So basically the way it handles asynchronicity is that it does a thing, and when it's done, it triggers an event. And that's how we're able to say, okay, hey, when you're done reading the file, do something with the file. But the blob itself, okay, which is technically a newer method, has a built-in text method. So basically, instead of you doing like, you have to create a file reader and the file reader read as text, you could just invoke the file method on the blob, or the text method on the blob itself, and which returns a promise, which is why I'm using the await keyword, because I'm going to await that promise, which saves me the whole step of having to create a file reader and define that event function and all that fun stuff. Okay, so now let's see what happens if I upload some files again. So I upload a couple files. Okay, I put some text in here. I hit upload. Okay. Oh, we hit an error here, so I must have done something kind of multi-part boundary not found. Okay, so here's probably where that issue comes in. Why not? Let me go back and take a look at my index.html. Boundary not found. Let's explore. Now, only when I use form data body form in Postman. Solution, I only had to prevent Postman to send a Why is this happening? When using content multi-part form data in HTML, you can add a boundary information. Okay. The headers, I had this issue I was trying to. So I was thinking, my solution simplify. My solution was to simplify my headers to this. Okay, well, we removed the header. Oh, but I didn't refresh the page. That's probably what it is. Okay, so let me refresh the page. So this is why you don't explicitly say the headers. Okay, apparently, because this is the problem it causes. Okay. So let's see, that one worked. Oh, but the error already happened. What happened that time? Is the text is not a function. Think about that. Files. Well, I guess let's console log that. Okay, so it's saying .text is not a function, which maybe I'm incorrect about what's actually being held in rec.file0. So let's find out. Okay, and I don't think I'll need the await for that, so. Okay. Okay, there we go. So multi-var form boundary. Here is the file. Okay, and that is the first file. That is all good. Okay, so I'm going to assume, hey, is this thing actually being treated as a blob? So let's ask this question. Is this a instance of blob? Because that's what should have that text method. Okay. Okay, let's see, is that true or false? False, it's not a blob. Okay. Cool, 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 cool. That answers that question. So in that case, let's see, can we turn that into a blob? Let's find out. Okay, blob. Take a look at the blob constructor. Can I pass it an array? So the array and iterable objects such as an array buffer typed array. This will be be put inside the blob. Note the strings here are encoded as UTF-8, unlike the usual UTF-6 string. So okay, it takes the array buffer, and that's technically what this is. So we can try that, passing that buffer to the blob constructor. Okay, so let's see here. If we do this dot buffer, okay, and then we pass that to a new blob. Curious if this will work. Okay, and then we do dot text. Oh wait, will that work? Let's find out. So we choose a couple files, put some text in there, upload, and is that right? I think that's right. Result, I think because that's what's inside result.txt. Let me just check. Let's see what's inside result.txt. Is it those numbers? Downloads, result.txt. Hey there, nope. Hey there, that's what I should have gotten back. Instead I got these numbers here. Okay. That ends up what it ends up encoding to. Okay, so we're getting a step in the right direction. Not quite there yet. Let me just think about that for a second. Okay, so doing a little studying, since this is a buffer, this buffer should have a method. So if I go back all the way to this, there should be a method on this buffer that's like toString. Let me just double check here in the documentation I'm reading. Yeah, toString. You might want to the following prompt. The same will evaluate to. But that's using the hex. Okay, but what if we want just text? Okay. Let's just try the toString method. And let's see what happens. So let's go back to our thing here. And we put that there. Put this here. Upload. And let's see what we get. Okay, and this time it actually read it. So that's how we can read the text file. Okay, basically we just take that buffer and we can use the toString, because essentially what that's going to be is a buffer object as per the Node API is not necessarily like a blob in traditional like front end sense. And then to create the blob, the text method. The problem is that the text method on the blob assumes UTF-8 encoding. Okay, and if we take a look over here at the objects, you see there's 7-bit encoded, so they're like ASCII. So this is going to work better. Okay, we can just do the buffer toString, and that's just going to take that buffer and then put it out as a string. There we go. In this case, if I were to do number 2, which was the JSON string, okay, so the second file in there, and let me just upload these 2 files again. Doot. Open, whatever. Okay, see this time it's JSON. That's great. And so we can see that's JSON. And then there actually is another method inside the buffer that's just like to JSON. Let me just make sure that's what it was. That might be just JSON. Where was that method? Yeah, to JSON, but JSON's all uppercase, so let's make sure we change that to JSON. And let's try that again. Okay, oops. Document. One more time. Let's upload these things. Upload. Okay, oh, this time we got the buffer. Type buffer files 1 buffer to JSON data. What? So I guess probably what I'd want to do then really is to string. That would give us that JSON string, and then we would wrap that in JSON.parse because we need to get the string first from the buffer, and then do that. Let's try that one more time. Okay, put some text here, upload, and there we go. There's our array of data. Okay, so and again, those were text files. If it were like an image or a video, I probably wouldn't need to do all that because I'm not going to really be like working with the video in my code. So I would just go send it off somewhere else. But just to kind of give you a little bit deeper, like what's going on, notice like there's slightly difference with the way I'm working out with it from Express because technically you're no longer working it's not working strictly with the way things work in the browser because Node had its own APIs for working with files and buffers and whatnot. So while Node supports blobs and file readers, and you can use those, that's not what Multer and Express are necessarily going to be using out of the box. So in this case, you saw it created these other types of objects that had like the buffer that I had to kind of like take a different approach to. And that's going to be different in other languages as well. Okay, the way they handle, file objects and things like that may be different. So you have to kind of read up on the language. But the idea is you're going to get this array of files here in Multer. The multi-part form data is going to allow you to deliver the file, and then you just kind of figure out in that backend framework, in that language, how do you parse that multi-part form data. But hopefully this gave you some information so you can start working better with files in your code. Again, generally, I would not recommend saving the blobs in your database. You can. Okay, there are blob types to save to the database where you can just save the blob, and then you have to load the blob, and then decode the blob. But more likely, it's easier to go save it to some sort of blob storage. Usually people use like Cloudinary or Amazon S3 or something like that, or Google blob storage or Azure blob storage. And essentially what you do is you'll send the blob there, so that aka the file, and then what it does, it sends you back a URL for that file, and then you store the URL in your database, and then you just go fetch it from that URL whenever you need it. So like for example, like a user's avatar. You just say, okay, well, here's the URL, and then you can just slap that on an image tag. Okay, but the idea is you have to get that user to upload the file first, and then once they upload the file, your post route will then take that file, upload it to Cloudinary, get back the URL, and then go create like that user. Okay, so just to kind of think through like sort of that whole process. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. My name is Alex Merced from AlexMercedCoder.dev. Have a great day and enjoy.